Have you ever have you ever actually tried to script your own life?
Oh, constantly. I think we all do it.
Right. I want you to really think about that for a second. Like, have you ever mapped out exactly how a specific situation is supposed to unfold?
Oh, absolutely. Down to the blocking and the lighting?
Yes, exactly. Perhaps it's, a romantic milestone, or maybe a crucial career negotiation, or even just, I don't know, a difficult conversation with a family member.
The ones you have in the shower.
Yes,
Yeah.
the shower arguments. You sit there in your head and you basically cast the perfect people. You plan the lighting, you imagine the exact razor-sharp dialogue you're going to deliver.
And you always have the perfect comeback.
Always. You anticipate precisely how the other person will respond. You might even have a specific song playing in the background of your mental theater just to, set the emotional tone.
It's an incredibly common cognitive habit, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because we are fundamentally storytelling creatures. Our brains are essentially prediction engines. They crave narrative control because it makes a chaotic world feel safe and manageable.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. So when we script a scenario in advance, we are attempting to force reality to behave like a well-directed, entirely predictable movie.
But the camera rarely rolls the way we want it to, does it?
Literally never.
You set the scene, you mentally call action, and then reality just wildly, spectacularly diverges from the storyboard.
Right. The other person misses their cue completely.
They go entirely off script, or the
Yeah.
weather changes, someone trips. Suddenly, your carefully choreographed, emotionally resonant scene turns into a chaotic, awkward blooper reel.
Which forces a very uncomfortable psychological confrontation.
Oh, the worst kind.
Because in that moment of awkwardness, we have to face the blunt reality that the universe hasn't actually read our script.
It's so rude of the universe, honestly.
It really is. The people around us are not actors hired to play supporting roles in our personal narrative. They are complex, unpredictable protagonists in their own lives.
And that tension, that friction between the flawless stories we tell ourselves and the beautiful, messy, entirely unchoreographed reality of what actually happens, that is the foundation of our deep dive today.
I'm so excited for this one.
Me too. We are turning our analytical lens onto a remarkably witty, emotionally resonant young adult novel called Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter.
Such a good text.
Our mission today is to unpack this narrative and explore how its central themes, so grief, the illusion of control, and the complicated, terrifying reality of human connection apply directly to how we all navigate our daily lives.
It is a phenomenal text for this kind of psychological and literary exploration. Because if you just glance at the back cover, this book presents itself as a sparkling, fast-paced, enemies-to-lovers romantic comedy.
Yeah, it looks super light and fluffy.
Exactly. It deliberately employs all the traditional hallmarks of the genre. But if you look past that shiny conventional exterior, you find this profound, incredibly nuanced study of how human beings use media, pop culture, and established narrative tropes to cope with profound trauma and loss.
It's surprisingly heavy.
It really is. It forces us to examine how the idea of a person, the character we've written for them in our own minds, can often blindingly eclipse who they actually are in reality.
I'll admit, when I first picked up the source material, I totally thought we were just going to be analyzing high school drama.
Just like locker combinations and prom date.
Right. But the psychological underpinnings are surprisingly dense. So whether you are a diehard romance fan who has memorized every single line of When Harry Met Sally,
Which is a masterpiece.
it is, or if you are someone who is purely fascinated by human psychology and the mechanisms behind why we behave the way we do, this deep dive is going to offer you a completely fresh lens.
Absolutely.
We want to challenge you to look at how you might be miscasting the people in your own life.
It's really an exercise in self-awareness. Because the scripts we inherit from our families, our culture, and the media we consume, they dictate so much of our baseline behavior.
And usually completely beneath our conscious awareness.
Right. We operate on these narrative assumptions without ever pausing to ask where they came from.
Okay, so let's start dissecting this inherited script by setting the stage with our protagonist. Her name is Liz Buxbaum.
And her late mother affectionately called her Libby Lou.
Yes, Libby Lou. Liz is a high school senior, and she is unequivocally obsessed with romantic comedies.
Obsessed is almost an understatement.
It really is. And I don't mean she just, enjoys watching them on a rainy Sunday. We're talking Bridget Jones's Diary, Notting Hill, Sweet Home Alabama, 10 Things I Hate About You.
The classics.
She studies them, She dresses in vintage, O-line floral dresses, actively trying to emulate a 1990s Meg Ryan character.
Which is such a specific aesthetic.
It's so specific. She even scores her mundane walks through the high school hallways with carefully curated soundtracks playing through her headphones, trying to give her life a cinematic undercurrent.
The author establishes this behavior very early on, but crucially, it is never presented as just a quirky, superficial hobby.
No, not at all.
The text makes it immediately clear that there is a deep psychological root to this obsession. Liz is not just a teenager with a niche interest in vintage cinema.
No, the stakes are much, much higher. Her mother, who was actually a screenwriter responsible for writing small-screen romantic comedies, passed away when Liz was only in the 5th grade.
Such a formative age to lose a parent.
And her mother essentially bequeathed this love of rom-coms to her. There's this heartbreaking detail in the text.
Oh, the DVD collection.
Yes. After her mom died, Liz's stepmom accidentally donated her mother's massive, carefully curated DVD collection to a local thrift store.
Just an absolute gut punch.
Right. And a young, grieving Liz actually tracked the boxes down, took all of her saved-up babysitting money, and bought the entire collection back.
Wow.
Yeah. Those plastic DVD cases are her most prized possessions.
Let's really analyze the psychological weight of those DVDs.
Yeah.
Because it's central to literally everything Liz does. We typically categorize romantic comedies as a form of escapism.
Yeah, you watch them to turn your brain off.
Exactly, escape the complexities of the real world. But for Liz, the mechanism is completely inverted.
How so?
Well, watching these movies is not an escape from reality. It is a desperate, ongoing attempt to stay anchored to her mother. The movies function as an inherited belief system. They operate almost like a fundamentalist religion for her.
A religion of rom-coms.
Basically, yeah. And the core tenet of this religion passed down directly from her mother is that the good, dependable guy is always right around the corner waiting for you, and the charming bad boy is a dangerous trap that must be avoided at all costs.
I understand the instinct to call it a religion because she definitely follows the rules of these movies like holy gospel. But I want to push back a little on her underlying motivation here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is Liz actually honoring her mother by living her life according to a late 90s movie formula? Or is she just using her mother's memory as a highly effective shield to avoid the real, unpredictable, and frankly terrifying experiences of being a teenager?
That's a really sharp question.
From the outside, it looks like Liz is wearing this incredibly heavy suit of armor made entirely out of old movie scripts. And sure, a suit of armor made of movie scripts might look charming and quirky on camera, but it makes it virtually impossible to actually move through the real, chaotic world with any kind of agility.
I wouldn't disagree with that assessment at all. In fact, I'd argue it's both a tribute and a defense mechanism, and the two have become completely indistinguishable to her.
They've blended together.
Yeah. When we look at the psychology of grief, particularly childhood grief, we often see that it freezes the individual in time. Liz is attempting to keep her mother alive by perfectly executing the types of narratives her mother loved to write.
If she lives in a rom-com, her mother's worldview survives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you hit on the core problem. Real life does not adhere to a neat 3-act structure. By demanding that her life look, feel, and sound like a heavily produced movie, she is actively preventing herself from experiencing genuine vulnerability.
Because vulnerability inherently requires you to drop the script. You can't be vulnerable if you already know what the other person is going to say.
Precisely. True connection requires the risk of the unknown. Liz's script is a way of mitigating risk. If she follows the tropes, she won't get hurt. She won't experience another devastating loss.
There is an incredibly specific, vivid memory detailed in the text that perfectly illustrates exactly how this specific script was handed down to her. It's totally foundational.
The Bridget Jones memory.
Yes. Liz remembers being 7 years old. She wakes up in the middle of the night from a terrifying nightmare specifically, a nightmare about a house-sized robotic cricket that knows her middle name.
Which is just wonderfully specific. It taps perfectly into the weird, surreal nature of childhood fears.
It really does. So terrified, she sneaks into her mom's bedroom for comfort.
It's the universal childhood impulse to seek the safety of a parent when the world feels unpredictable.
And when she climbs into the bed, her mom is awake, watching Bridget Jones's Diary on a boxy television sitting on her dresser. They watch the ending of the movie together. But Liz's 7-year-old brain is completely confused by the resolution.
Right, because she doesn't get the appeal of Mark Darcy.
She cannot compute why the protagonist, Bridget Jones, would ultimately choose Mark Darcy. To a 7-year-old, Mark Darcy is the equivalent of one ginormous yawn.
He's stiff, he's quiet, he wears terrible sweaters.
The Rainier sweater. Liz doesn't understand why Bridget wouldn't choose the incredibly charming, handsome, quick-witted playboy Daniel Cleaver. Young Liz falls madly in love with the bad boy's charisma.
Which, developmentally speaking, is entirely expected. A 7-year-old is primarily processing surface-level stimulus. Charisma, humor, and flashiness are easy to understand.
Right.
The quiet, steadfast reliability of a character like Mark Darcy requires an understanding of long-term consequences and emotional maturity that a child simply doesn't possess yet.
But her mom immediately stops her from cheering for the bad boy. Liz recalls this moment with pristine clarity. She can still smell the vanilla of her mom's perfume. She can hear the exact cadence of her voice as her mom plays with her hair and sets her straight.
Such a powerful sensory memory.
Her mom tells her, charm and intrigue can only get you so far, Libby Lou. Those things always disappear, which is why you never, ever choose the bad boy.
Wow.
And that casual late-night movie commentary, that becomes Liz's unquestioned foundational gospel for the rest of her life.
We really need to pause and examine the cognitive mechanics of that moment. Under normal circumstances, a parent's comment about a movie is just a passing opinion.
Just a throwaway line.
Exactly. But when a parent dies prematurely, their final lessons, their habits, and even their throwaway remarks often become hyper-amplified in the surviving child's mind.
The trauma locks it in.
The trauma of the loss acts as a sealant. That casual movie critique was transformed by the sheer force of grief into an unbreakable rule for survival.
The rule being, choose the good, dependable guy. Reject the charming, unpredictable bad boy.
Precisely. To deviate from that rule, even a decade later, would feel to Liz like a profound betrayal of her mother's memory. It would feel like letting her mother die all over again.
Which creates an impossibly rigid casting call for Liz's life as she enters her senior year of high school. She isn't just looking to date. She is actively scouting for actors who can perfectly fill these highly specific roles.
Yes.
This rigid belief system naturally forces her to start categorizing the people around her, which leads us to the two boys who essentially audition for the lead roles in the movie of Liz's life.
The way she categorizes these two figures is a fascinating study in confirmation bias and psychological projection.
Let's introduce the two contenders. First, we have Michael Young. He is the childhood crush who moved away years ago and has just triumphantly returned to town for their senior year.
The prodigal crush returns.
On paper, Michael is the absolute idealized Mr. Right. He is smart. He is exceedingly polite. He reads Jane Austen purely on a bet from a friend, which instantly earns him massive literary points.
Obviously.
He has returned from his time away with a swoon-worthy, soft Texas drawl. He dresses impeccably in crisp khakis and nice black shirts. He is the living embodiment of Mark Darcy. He is the dependable, perfect guy that her mother promised was waiting around the corner.
Michael slots perfectly into the protagonist role of the script Liz is trying to direct. But what we really need to investigate is why he fits so seamlessly.
Okay, why?
I would argue it has very little to do with who Michael Young actually is as a human being and everything to do with what his absence has allowed him to become. He is the ultimate blank slate.
I'm not sure I follow. How is he a blank slate if he has all these specific charming qualities?
Because Liz hasn't actually spent any meaningful time with him since they were in the 5th grade.
Oh, right.
He moved away right around the same time her mother died. That is a massive chronological gap. Because of that immense physical distance and the passage of time, Liz has had years to project every single one of her meticulously crafted rom-com fantasies onto his memory.
So he's not even real to her.
He isn't a real, complex, flawed teenage boy to her. He is an avatar for perfection. He is, quite literally, Gatsby's green light at the end of the dock.
Which is brilliant because they actually study the Great Gatsby in their high school lit class throughout the novel.
Exactly. It's a brilliant thematic overlay by the author. Michael represents the unattainable, pristine dream of a happily ever after that will somehow retroactively make all of Liz's childhood suffering and grief worthwhile.
That makes total sense. We project perfection onto the people who are far enough away that they can't ruin the illusion with their actual personalities.
Exactly. Distance breeds perfection.
Okay, let's flip the coin and look at the antithesis to the green light. Enter Wes Bennet. Wes is the next-door neighbor. He is the childhood nemesis. While Michael was away becoming this shimmering beacon of perfection, Wes has been right there, day in and day out, being a massive, unavoidable thorn in Liz's side.
He's constantly present.
The book actually opens with them in the midst of an ongoing, highly tactical, vicious turf war over a single street parking spot in front of their houses.
Which is arguably the most mundane, unromantic, grounded in reality battlefield imaginable. A street parking spot.
So mundane.
It immediately establishes that their dynamic exists in the gritty reality of the everyday, not in a cinematic dreamscape.
And they play dirty. Wes is a jock, he's loud, he's a bit of a player. To reserve this contested parking spot for himself, he routinely drags incredibly heavy, obnoxious objects into the street that he knows Liz isn't physically strong enough to move.
It's basically psychological warfare.
It is. We're talking an iron picnic table, a literal truck motor, monster truck wheels. He is aggressively staking his claim.
And Liz doesn't back down.
No. In retaliation, Liz doesn't just complain, she escalates. She calls the city on him when his car is parked there for 3 days, earning him a municipal parking ticket.
She weaponizes local bureaucracy against him. It's fantastic.
But Wes retaliates to the escalation by taking that exact parking ticket and affixing it to the dead center of Liz's windshield, directly in her line of sight, using layers upon layers of commercial-grade clear packing tape.
Just brutal.
She has to stand out there and painstakingly scrape it off with a razor blade.
Now, put Wes next to Michael and look at the contrast. If Michael is the blank slate of projection, Wes is raw, unfiltered, abrasive reality. Wes knows exactly who Liz is.
And not the movie version.
Right. Not the idealized vintage cinema version she presents to the world, but the actual person. He knows she wears vintage granny shoes to secondhand bookstores. He knows she hyper-organizes her daily planner with an elaborate system of color-coded stickers.
He sees all of it.
He knows she is prone to wild dramatics and makes up terrible off-the-cuff songs when she's stressed. He knows the real, messy, entirely uncinematic Liz. And conversely, Liz knows the real Wes.
She definitely does, and she catalogs every single one of his flaws. She knows he cracks his knuckles loudly, which completely triggers what she calls her ick response.
The dreaded ick.
In her mind, the ick is that sudden, visceral cringe feeling that instantly and permanently kills any romantic potential. She sees him hanging out with his rowdy friends, drinking beer, living what she views as a totally unromantic, Superbad-style existence. He is the antithesis of the refined Jane Austen reading gentleman.
But we need to look closer at this concept of the ick. Why does the brain generate that feeling? I'd argue that for Liz, the ick is actually a psychological defense mechanism.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when you're deeply committed to a fantasy like her projection onto Michael, your brain has to actively repel anyone who threatens to pull you back into reality. Knuckle cracking is a deeply human, slightly gross physical reality.
It grounds you in the room.
Exactly. By focusing on it and labeling it as an insurmountable flaw, she creates a protective barrier. It allows her to dismiss Wes entirely.
That is fascinating. So the ick is just a tool to maintain the fantasy.
Exactly. And this dynamic begs a vital question for you, the listener, as you evaluate your own relationships. How often do we engage in this exact same cognitive distortion?
We probably do it more than we think.
How often do we elevate casual acquaintances, distant crushes, or people we see on social media to absolute idol status simply because their distance from our daily lives allows us to imagine they are flawless?
Wow.
And simultaneously, how often do we dismiss, overlook, or actively push away the people who are closest to us, the people who actually show up for us, who see our own flaws and stick around because we are too distracted by their everyday mundane humanity? We reject the person cracking their knuckles next to us on the couch while we stare longingly at the flawless, filtered profile of a stranger.
We do it constantly. We are conditioned to want the sleek, airbrushed movie poster. And we actively avoid the messy, behind-the-scenes documentary footage. And Lynn Painter brilliantly illustrates this violent clash between fantasy and reality in a scene early in the book.
The hallway scene.
Yes, it happens in the school hallway on the first day of senior year. This is Liz's meticulously imagined meet-cute. She sees Michael walking down the hall toward her. Instantly, her brain shifts the world into cinematic slow motion.
Of course it does.
She literally imagines tiny, animated bluebirds chirping and flitting around his head like a Disney princess movie. She has her headphones on, blasting the soundtrack from Bridget Jones, specifically Van Morrison's Someone Like You.
So she's fully scored the moment.
Completely. She thinks this is the moment, the cosmos is finally aligned, the script is happening, he walks over, they embrace, and her internal monologue is cataloging the soft texture of his shirt and the golden hue of his skin.
The scene is completely, perfectly scripted, blocked, and scored in her mind. It's the culmination of years of waiting.
And then, bam,
The interruption.
The universe physically and aggressively shoves reality right into the middle of her fantasy. Someone bumps violently into them from behind, totally shattering the embrace, knocking Liz away from Michael, and completely ruining the cinematic perfection of the moment. And who is the disruption?
Let me guess.
It's Wes Bennet. He was walking backward down the crowded hallway, talking to a friend, not paying attention, and he literally crashes into the fantasy.
I love that so much.
It is such a brilliant physical manifestation of the thematic core of the book. Wes represents the chaotic, unscripted reality that constantly, unavoidably disrupts Liz's carefully curated fantasies.
It's a beautifully constructed literary device. The script is literally interrupted by the unpredictable neighbor, and this physical disruption kicks off the primary plot because in the aftermath of that awkward collision, Michael, the perfect green light, seems entirely out of reach for Liz.
He just slips through her fingers?
When they finally speak, he doesn't even recognize her vintage A-line floral dress as a deliberate fashion statement. He awkwardly asks her what diner she waitresses at, assuming she is wearing a work uniform to school.
Oh, that moment is so painfully cringe-inducing. You can feel her soul leave her body when he asks about the diner.
It's devastating for her because her costume has completely failed to communicate her intended character to her chosen leading man. The visual language she has spent years perfecting means absolutely nothing to him.
It completely bombs.
And to compound the disaster, Michael's almost immediately showing significant interest in Lainey Morgan, a girl who Liz intensely despises. And we have to unpack why Liz hates Lainey.
Yeah, let's talk about Lainey.
Lainey is beautiful, she's popular, but more importantly, Lainey is the girl who used to bring lunchboxes to elementary school, filled with perfect, loving, handwritten notes from her mother. Notes that a motherless Liz used to stare at with deep, agonizing envy back in 5th grade.
Ah, that's just heartbreaking.
Lainey doesn't just represent romantic competition. She represents the girl who didn't lose her mother. She represents the girl who got to have the perfect, unbroken life.
So feeling entirely desperate, watching her carefully planned senior year script slipping away before her eyes and feeling threatened by the ghost of her childhood envy, Liz resorts to one of the most classic, time-honored tropes in the romantic comedy playbook.
Here we go.
When you have these two fundamentally different leads, the idealized fantasy who is slipping away, and the chaotic reality next door, the protagonist, inevitably tries to force the fantasy to happen by using the reality as a tool. She makes a deal with the devil. She goes to Wes Bennet.
This brings us to the segment of the narrative where life attempts to imitate art and fails spectacularly at every turn.
Liz strikes a massive bargain. She officially surrenders her beloved street parking spot, the Forever Spot, the ultimate prize in their years-long war to Wes, if he agrees to help her win over Michael.
That's a massive sacrifice.
It really is. Wes has the inside track because he actually hangs out with Michael. So Liz decides to infiltrate Wes's world. This launches a sequence of classic recognizable tropes. We get the crowded high school party scene, we get the makeover montage at the mall, we get the forced fake proximity where they have to pretend to be closer than they are.
But what elevates this narrative is how masterfully the author subverts every single one of these expected tropes.
Totally subverts them.
She sets up the structural expectation of a soaring cinematic moment and then brutally, hilariously undercuts it with awkward, humiliating, battle-y reality.
Let's look at the party at Rhino's house. Liz goes to this party fully expecting to have this deep, soulful, moonlit reconnection with Michael. Instead, she is entirely out of her element. It's a sweaty, loud, beer-soaked basement. It smells terrible.
Not romantic at all.
As we mentioned, Michael doesn't understand her clothes. And the absolute crowning jewel of the evening's disaster. A drunk girl named Ashley literally throws up all over Liz's vintage shoes and dress.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's a masterclass in trope deconstruction. The idealized movie moments keep getting ruined by the undeniable presence of bodily fluids, miscommunications, and general human awkwardness. Liz is stubbornly trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
She just won't give up on the script.
She operates under the flawed assumption that if she just executes the structural plot points of rom-com, go to the party, look nice, talk to the boy, the profound emotional connection will naturally and automatically follow. But you cannot engineer genuine human intimacy through trickery, staging, or plotting.
But wait, I have to stop and ask a question about Wes's motivation here. If Wes is supposedly the nemesis, why is he suddenly playing fairy godmother?
Right, what's in it for him?
He claims he's doing it purely to secure the parking spot. But when you look closer at his actions, that explanation completely falls apart. There's so much more going on beneath the surface. For example, Wes takes her to the mall to buy new clothes. He claims he is giving her the hot girl treatment, telling her quite bluntly that she needs to stop dressing like a waitress Doris Day if she ever wants a guy like Michael to actually notice her.
This mall scene is a fascinating sociological inversion of the classic makeover trope. Think about movies like She's All That or The Princess Diaries.
Right, where they take off her glasses.
Exactly. In those films, the nerdy or weird girl takes off her glasses, puts on a revealing bodycon dress, magically learns how to walk in heels, and suddenly conforms perfectly to traditional male gaze beauty standards, thereby becoming the worthy object of desire.
Changing everything about herself.
The underlying message is usually about erasing individuality to achieve social acceptance.
But Wes does the exact opposite. He isn't trying to change Liz into a generic popular girl. I'd argue he's actually trying to strip away the movie character costume she hides behind.
Yes.
When they're shopping, he bypasses the typical party dresses. He buys her a pair of classic white Chuck Taylor sneakers. He picks out a plaid kilt and a ruffled cardigan. He isn't putting her in something she hates. He's finding clothes that actually fit her quirky personality, but that are grounded in the real world of a contemporary high school rather than a 1990s movie set.
That is a crucial distinction. Wes is acting as a cultural translator. He sees Liz's genuine uniqueness, what Michael later somewhat dismissively refers to as her being a weirdie, and Wes is trying to translate that unique personality into a visual language that the rest of the high school ecosystem and, specifically Michael, can process and understand.
Oh, I like that, a cultural translator.
He understands the sociology of high school uniforms. He isn't erasing her identity. He is helping her express it authentically without the protective, isolating armor of the vintage costumes. He's pulling her out of the past and into the present.
And during this entire shopping trip, Wes completely reveals his hand. He reveals himself to be an incredibly astute, discerning viewer of romantic comedies.
He's secretly an expert.
He openly critiques the formulaic nature of the genre. He tells Liz that these movies are aspartame-infused, tropey garbage where people who fundamentally hate each other magically fall in love just because the script says so.
Which is pretty funny coming from him.
Yet while he's delivering this scathing critique, he perfectly executes the makeover montage with her, complete with holding up different outfits and shaking his head. It's wildly ironic. He claims to hate the tropes, but he knows the structural beats inside and out.
He knows them because he actually watches them, even if he cloaks his viewing in a layer of irony, pretending he only watches them for the comedic absurdity.
Right, he's totally a fan.
But his critique is actually doing vital psychological work. He is actively challenging Liz's worldview. He asks her, point blank, if she genuinely believes that plotting, scheming, planning, and trickery are acceptable, healthy ways to spark true love.
That's a hard question.
He is forcing her to confront the ethical and emotional bankruptcy of her tightly controlled script. He's asking her, do you want a real relationship? Or do you just want to successfully produce a play?
But the real turning point of this deep dive, and undeniably the profound emotional core of the entire book, isn't found in the bright fluorescent lights of a crowded shopping mall or the sticky floors of a frat-style basement party.
No, the tone shifts significantly.
The pivot happens in the quiet, messy, painful reality of grief, which brings us to an incredible sequence that we can think of as the architecture of grief.
This is the moment where the narrative elevates. It shifts gears from being a lighthearted, clever comedy of errors into a profound, surprisingly heavy exploration of how we process long-term loss.
Liz goes to the local cemetery to visit her mother's grave. It's a beautiful, crisp spring day. She's sitting there alone, talking out loud to her mom, giving her life updates, specifically detailing the ongoing Michael situation.
This is her sanctuary.
This cemetery is her ultimate private sanctuary. It is the physical location of her grief. And suddenly, Wes accidentally intrudes. He happens to be visiting the cemetery's well, and he walks up to her.
Uninvited.
Liz's reaction is immediate and explosive. She lashes out. She yells at him, furious and deeply violated that he would invade this sacred, private space.
Her hostility is completely understandable from a psychological standpoint. The cemetery is the one physical place on Earth where she feels her script still holds absolute power, where she can commune directly with the director of her life.
She can just be with her mom.
Exactly. Wes's sudden presence is a jarring, uninvited intrusion of the chaotic real world into her frozen, carefully maintained shrine of grief. He's a reminder of the present, and she is fiercely guarding the past.
But this is where Wes proves his worth as a character. He doesn't just get defensive, walk away, and write her off as crazy or dramatic.
Which a lot of teenage boys would do.
They absolutely would. Later that night, they meet in their shared backyard. There's a specific spot nestled between their fences that they've always called the secret area. It's a liminal space, neither his house nor hers.
Neutral territory.
They sit out there in the dark. They roast s'mores over a fire pit. Wes lights up a Swisher Sweets cigar, which is such a perfectly authentic, slightly rebellious teenage detail that grounds the scene in reality, and they end up having an incredibly vulnerable, completely unscripted conversation.
This conversation is the emotional fulcrum of the story. Because in this liminal space, Liz finally manages to articulate why she is struggling so profoundly with her senior year.
And it's so heartbreaking.
She admits to Wes that all of these traditional high school milestones, prom, filling out college applications, graduations, feel entirely hollow to her. They don't feel like the triumphs they are supposed to be. They feel like abandonments.
The exact quote. Let me find it. She says this heartbreaking line. It kind of feels like I'm really losing her this year. My life is changing and moving forward, and she's being left behind with my childhood. I had to put the book down for a minute after reading that. It is such a devastating, piercingly accurate description of adolescent grief. It captures the profound, unique guilt of growing up and accumulating new memories without the person you lost. It's survivor's guilt mixed with coming-of-age anxiety.
It is precisely that, and this is where we really need to unpack what I mean when I say the architecture of grief. Grief isn't just a feeling, it's something we build.
We constructed.
We construct psychological monuments to the deceased. Liz has spent years trying to build a monument to her mother out of perfect cinematic moments. She genuinely believes that if she can just execute a flawless, rom-com-worthy prom night, she will have successfully honored her mother's memory.
Because her mom loved those stories.
Right. She thinks her mother's legacy demands a perfect, happy ending script. Her architecture of grief is entirely structural and narrative.
But Wes begins to dismantle that architecture, and he does something incredibly crucial here. He doesn't offer her the empty, well-meaning platitudes that adults usually give grieving teenagers.
He doesn't say, oh, your mom is looking down on you from heaven and smiling.
Or tell her that time heals all wounds. Instead, he gives her something tangible. He gives her a piece of reality. He shares a highly specific personal memory of Liz's mom.
A memory, it's worth noting, that Liz did not know existed.
Right. Wes tells her a story about a time when they were little kids. He felt terrible because he had accidentally burned down a massive portion of her mom's prized rose bush with a rogue firecracker.
Such a classic kid mistake.
He was hiding in the yard, consumed with shame and fear of getting in trouble. And Liz's mom found him. But instead of yelling at him or punishing him, she deliberately faked snagging her finger on a rose thorn.
Which is so brilliant.
She dramatically played up the injury and asked young Wes for his immediate help in bandaging it, purely to make him feel useful, to shift his focus, and to alleviate his crippling guilt over the firecracker.
By choosing to share that specific story at that exact moment, Wes does two profound psychological things for Liz.
Okay, what's the first?
First, he validates her grief by proving that her mother's memory is not solely her burden to carry. Her mother lives on in the minds and experiences of other people too. Memory is communal. She doesn't have to keep the shrine running all by herself.
That's beautiful.
Second, and much more importantly, he helps Liz realize that her mother's true legacy isn't found in rigid scripts or perfect dramatic cinematic moments. Her legacy existed in her messy, spontaneous, deeply empathetic human interactions, her humor, her kindness, her ability to instantly ad-lib a fake injury just to make a scared little boy feel safe.
And Wes explicitly connects that legacy directly back to Liz. He tells her flat out that she does not have to perfectly emulate a pristine 1950s Doris Day character to earn her mother's posthumous approval.
The Doris Day line is so good.
I want to read the exact quote from the text because it is so powerful and cuts right through the noise. Wes looks at her and says, "You can wear jeans sometimes and straighten your hair if you feel like it and curse like a sailor and honestly do whatever you want and she'd still think you're amazing because you are. I guarantee she would found you charming as fuck when you were smoking a Swisher in the secret area."
It's an absolute revelation for Liz. Wes is doing something no one else has done. He is giving her explicit, hard-earned permission to put down the script.
Finally.
He is telling her that her mother loved her. The real, chaotic, swearing, cigar-smoking Liz, not the sanitized character Liz has been exhausting herself trying to play. He completely shatters the rigid, suffocating rules of her grief architecture.
It's a profound moment of connection. But because human beings are incredibly stubborn and because our brains aggressively cling to the neural pathways and comfort zones we've established, Liz does not immediately abandon her grand plan.
Change is hard.
She has a moment of clarity, but she still clings to the script. She still fundamentally believes that Michael is the ultimate prize, the green light that will fix her life.
The fantasy is a hard habit to break.
And this stubbornness sets up the ultimate test of her worldview, which brings us to the collision between reality and the idea. Let's call this the "you've got mail" epiphany.
Structurally, we have arrived at the climax of the rom-com formula. Prom night,
The big dance.
the ultimate proving ground for high school romance.
Prom night arrives, and technically speaking, the scheme she concocted with Wes has worked flawlessly. Michael formally asks Liz to prom.
The plan worked.
It did. She gets the beautiful dress, she gets the corsage, she rides in the car, she goes to the incredibly fancy restaurant. But the reality of the experience is completely hollow.
It falls flat.
It is sterile. It is overwhelmingly boring. There is absolutely no spark, no chemistry, no magic. They sit across from each other at a white tablecloth restaurant called Sebastian's, and they end up having a dry, academic debate about The Great Gatsby.
Which is a layer of dramatic irony so thick you could cut it with a knife, given that, as we discussed, Michael literally is her Gatsby.
Exactly. They are sitting there, and Liz argues that Daisy Buchanan, in the physical flesh, is a monstrous antagonist compared to the pristine, perfect dream that Gatsby had built up in his mind about her. And Michael agrees with her, saying Daisy's sole literary purpose was to be the unattainable dream, and that the reality of her could never match the fantasy. They are literally explicitly discussing the exact dynamic of their own date, entirely without realizing it.
The author's just flexing there. That is brilliant writing.
And as this boring date drags on, Liz is slowly, painfully observing Michael interact with Lainey Morgan, her supposed sworn enemy.
Right, the lunchbox girl.
And she realizes they are actually perfect for each other. Michael reveals that Lainey volunteers every single weekend at an animal shelter and is diligently saving up all her money for a mission trip.
So she's basically an angel.
Lainey even has a genuinely sweet, profoundly empathetic moment with Liz in the bathroom, expressing deep, unprompted sympathy for Liz losing her mom. Liz is hit with the crushing realization that she has completely, unfairly miscast Lainey as the villain of her story.
The carefully constructed script is disintegrating in real time because the actors are flat out refusing to play the one-dimensional roles Liz aggressively assigned to them.
They won't say their lines.
Lainey isn't an evil antagonist. She is a complex, kind person with her own life. Michael isn't the soulmate destined to save her. He's just a perfectly nice guy who's infinitely better suited to be a casual friend. The fantasy simply cannot sustain itself under the crushing weight of complex reality.
The true paradigm-shifting epiphany doesn't happen at the dance. It happens after. Liz goes home early, feeling entirely defeated, still wearing her expensive prom dress.
The classic sad post-prom moment.
She flops onto the living room couch, wraps herself in a blanket, and turns on her ultimate comfort movie. You've Got Mail. Her stepmom, Helena, walks into the room. Now, we need to understand Helena.
Let's talk about Helena.
Helena is the anti-mom. She is deeply sarcastic. She drives a loud, aggressive muscle car, and she routinely claims to actively hate cheesy romantic comedies.
A total contrast to Liz's mom.
But she sits down on the couch next to Liz, pops open a can of Pringles, watches the screen for a few minutes, and delivers a piece of film analysis that completely shatters Liz's worldview.
Helena zeroes in on the central driving dynamic of You've Got Mail. She points out that the real love triangle in the movie isn't between three different people.
Yeah.
It's between Kathleen Kelly, the idealized online idea of NY152, and the physical, abrasive reality of Joe Fox.
Helena explains it perfectly. She says Kathleen is deeply in love with the idea of this man she met in an online chat room. She loves the persona he projects, but in real life, she actively, passionately hates Joe Fox, the ruthless businessman who is destroying her bookstore, even though Joe Fox and NY152 are the exact same human being.
It's all about the idea versus the reality.
Helena looks at Liz, sees exactly what is happening with Michael and Wes, and flips this dynamic on its head. She says, sometimes we get so tied up in our idea of what we think we want that we miss out on the amazingness of what we could actually have.
It is a devastatingly precise clinical diagnosis of how Liz has conducted her entire life. It is the thesis statement of her psychological struggle.
So how do we process this? Does Liz just realize she picked the wrong boy, or is something much deeper happening?
It's definitely deeper.
I like to think of the epiphany this way. Imagine you are flipping through an incredibly high-end, glossy bakery catalog. You see this full-page, professionally lit photograph of a magnificent, multi-tiered, perfectly frosted cake.
It looks perfect.
It is pristine. It is a work of art. That cake is Michael Young. You spend months anticipating it, saving up for it, imagining how incredible it will be. But when it finally arrives on your doorstep and you take a bite, the texture is entirely wrong.
It's a disappointment.
It tastes like dry, flavorless cardboard. It looks flawless, but it possesses absolutely no substance. Meanwhile, sitting right on your kitchen counter is a pan of homemade brownies. They are misshapen, they are gooey, they are crumbling apart.
They look like a total disaster.
But you take a bite, and it is the most delicious, rich, deeply satisfying thing you have ever tasted in your life. That pan of messy brownies is Wes Bennet.
I love this analogy.
Liz has spent her entire adolescence starving while staring at the glossy catalog, completely ignoring the sustenance sitting right in front of her.
The catalog cake versus the homemade brownie. It's a perfect encapsulation of the illusion of the green light versus the friction and ultimate satisfaction of reality.
The brownie always wins.
And the tragedy, which drives the final act of the book, is that Liz realizes this just a moment too late. Her realization is delayed by a massive cognitive distortion.
Right, because right before the prom, there's this heartbreaking, colossal misunderstanding based entirely on her own confirmation bias.
The Beagle Board.
Remember how we talked about Michael dropping his boggle game when they were kids?
Yes.
Wes remembers that Liz remembered that. So Wes spends hours, probably days, creating a giant life-sized boggle board out of painted shoeboxes.
The effort is incredible.
He attaches them to his car, drives over, and uses them to ask a girl to prom. He looks at Liz and tells her he's going big, asking for the possibility of something more.
He's putting his heart on the line.
But Liz, whose brain is so entirely blinded by her own script, a script that dictates Wes is the nemesis and Michael is the hero, cannot even process the data in front of her. She assumes Wes built this incredible grand gesture for Lainey Morgan, or perhaps for the beautiful cheerleader, Alex Benedetti.
Doesn't even compute for her.
She completely, utterly misses the fact that Wes is standing right there, trying to ask her to prom. She pushes him away, encouraging him to go pursue Alex. She accidentally rejects the brownie while it's still warm.
It's a textbook example of confirmation bias.
Yeah?
Her reliance on the script literally blinds her to the genuine affection standing 2 feet in front of her.
She just can't see it.
Her brain simply cannot conceive that Wes, the designated nemesis, could possibly transition into the romantic lead. It violates the fundamental rules of her mother's gospel. If she accepts Wes, she breaks the rule, and if she breaks the rule, she loses her mother. So her brain invents an alternative reality where the gesture is meant for someone else.
But the Kame male epiphany with Helena finally breaks that cognitive loop.
He wakes up.
Realizing she has fundamentally miscast the actors in her own life, Liz finally takes control of the pen. But the crucial difference is she isn't trying to write a polished movie script anymore. She is finally ready to write something real, something messy. And that brings us to our final sequence, the grand gesture and the soundtrack of life.
Armed with Helena's parting advice to be brave enough to go big, Liz decides to finally make a proactive move based in reality rather than reaction.
And she does it her way. She doesn't just send a text message or leave a voicemail. She goes old school. She burns a physical CD.
Such a great touch.
She uses a Sharpie to title it The Soundtrack of Wes and Liz. She meticulously curates a list of songs: Van Morrison, Taylor Swift, Bozzy, Foo Fighters. But importantly, these aren't generic love songs.
They mean something specific to them.
These are songs that represent their actual, messy, combative, hilarious relationship. She's not scoring a fantasy anymore. She's scoring their shared reality. She grabs the CD and runs next door in the middle of the night to declare her feelings.
We need to pause and thoroughly examine this motif of soundtracks, because it is the final key to understanding Liz's psychological evolution.
Okay, let's break it down.
Throughout the entire book, as we noted at the beginning, Liz scores every moment of her life. She plays specific songs through her headphones to soften the sharp edges of the world. Why does she do this? Because it gives her the ultimate illusion of control.
Control the music, control the mood.
Exactly. In a movie, the director uses music to tell the audience exactly how to feel. If the music swells, it's romantic. If it's a minor chord, it's sad. If Liz controls music in her ears, she believes she can control the emotional tone of her reality, protecting herself from unpredictable feelings.
But music, much like actual human life, evokes wild, entirely unpredictable emotions. You can't control it. When Liz bravely runs over to Wes's house to make her grand declaration, her carefully planned romantic gesture immediately derails.
It goes so wrong.
She doesn't find Wes sitting alone in the dark, pensively pining for her by the window. She walks in and finds him sitting on his living room couch with Alex, the beautiful, physically perfect cheerleader.
The carefully curated script goes out the window in a matter of seconds. The reality of other people's choices intrudes again.
Liz completely panics. Her brain short-circuits. She doesn't deliver a smooth, eloquent, Meg Ryan-esque monologue in the rain. She starts babbling, completely incoherently.
It's hard to read, honestly.
She attempts to use this terrible, convoluted, entirely confusing metaphor about pennies. She stands there, trembling, and says to Wes, "You wake up one day and your eyes are open to just how amazing pennies are, like the best coins ever. But you weren't careful, and you lost your penny."
So awkward.
It is awkward. It is humiliating. Alex, the cheerleader, is staring at her like she's insane and literally asks Liz if she needs to borrow some money.
That's hilarious.
Liz is so mortified that she turns around, sprints out the door, climbs over the physical barrier of the backyard fence, and flees into the night. It is the absolute antithesis of a scripted movie moment.
And that, psychologically speaking, is exactly why it eventually works.
Because it's real.
Yes. If we connect this back to you, the listener, and how you navigate the complexities of your own relationships, the best, most authentic moments in our lives rarely survive the rigid scripting we subject them to.
They just don't.
It is the spontaneous, unchoreographed, deeply embarrassing vulnerability, like standing in a brightly lit living room, voice shaking, babbling nonsensically about coins in front of your crush, and his incredibly intimidating date that actually bridges the gap between two people. Perfection creates an impenetrable distance.
That's a great way to put it.
True vulnerability, in all its sweaty, embarrassing glory, is what actually creates connection.
And the climax of the book proves this psychological principle beautifully. Liz drives around in her car for an hour, sobbing to Adele, because what else do you do when your life falls apart? And when she finally pulls back into her driveway, Wes is waiting for her.
A payoff.
He is standing in the pouring rain. He literally chases her down the driveway. She is still trying to protect herself. She tries to push him away again, reverting to her insecurities, telling him he deserves someone flawless and perfect like Alex. But Wes delivers the ultimate grounding reality check.
It's a great moment.
He completely rejects the idea that Alex's physical or social perfection has any value to him. He looks at Liz and simply says, "She isn't you."
He isn't choosing a rom-com trope. He isn't choosing a plot device. He is choosing a specific, flawed, complex person.
And then finally, we do get the soaring movie moment. But the difference is that it has been deeply earned through reality. He pulls her in for a breathless, cinematic, rain-soaked kiss pressed against the trunk of her car, and the song Paradise by Bodsey is playing.
But not in her headphones.
Exactly. Crucially, it isn't playing through Liz's protective headphones. It is playing out loud from the speakers of Wes's car. It is existing in the shared reality of the moment, not just in Liz's isolated head. It feels exactly like a movie, but it is a moment built on friction, on stupid arguments over parking spots, on shared grief, and on a foundation of genuine friendship.
The epilogue of the novel seals this thematic journey perfectly. We jump forward a few months, and Liz and Wes are visiting the cemetery together right before they leave for college.
They are kneeling in the dirt, planting yellow mums at her mother's grave. And I want you to look at the specific, mundane details the author chooses to include in this final image. Wes is wearing a joke t-shirt that Liz bought for him at a thrift store that says, "Educated Feminist Bro."
Such a Wes shirt.
He is casually petting her grumpy cat, Mr. Fitzpervert, who is wearing a ridiculous plaid scarf. Liz realizes, sitting there in the dirt, that Wes actually is the Mark Darcy.
He really is.
He is dependable, he is fiercely loyal, but he is so vastly superior to the idealized movie version because he is real. He is the guy who will ruthlessly tease her about her terrible gardening skills while simultaneously gently helping her honor the memory of her dead mother.
He honors the profound reality of her grief without allowing it to become a sterile mausoleum. He brings life and sarcasm and humor and messy, vibrant reality into the exact spaces that Liz had spent years trying to keep sterile, perfect, and dead.
So as we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, I think it's clear that Better Than the Movies is doing far more heavy lifting than your average teenage romance.
Way more.
It isn't just a story about a girl picking the right boy in high school. It is a profound story about giving yourself the radical permission to put down the script. It is about realizing that honoring the people we've lost, or the high ideals we hold dear, does not require us to freeze our lives into perfect, unmoving cinematic dioramas.
You have to live.
True honor means living loudly, messily, and authentically. It means allowing yourself to get puked on at a party. It means being brave enough to babble incoherently about pennies when you're terrified. It means choosing to eat a gooey, misshapen brownie instead of starving yourself while staring at a picture of a cardboard cake.
It serves as a powerful, necessary call to action for all of us. I strongly encourage you, the listener, to take a hard, honest look at the architecture of your own life right now.
Who are you casting?
Exactly. Who have you cast in rigid, unforgiving roles? Who is your designated villain, your Laney Morgan, whom you might be entirely misjudging because of your own historical baggage? Who is your green light, the Michael Young you are projecting endless perfection onto from a safe distance?
Good questions.
And most importantly, are you missing out on the messy, wonderful, hilarious reality sitting right next door because you are stubbornly waiting for a perfectly scored, perfectly lit movie moment that is never, ever going to arrive?
That is the ultimate question we all have to answer, and I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you step away from this deep dive and go about your day. Think about the soundtrack of your life right now.
Well, I like this.
If someone were to find your metaphorical CD, the playlist that scores your daily existence, would it be filled with the dramatic, aspirational songs of the flawless character you wish you were playing? Or would it be filled with the strange, eclectic, beautiful songs that honestly reflect the chaotic, unpredictable reality of who you actually are?
The music is always inevitably better when it matches the honest truth of the scene.
It really is. Remember, the camera of your life is always rolling, but you don't need a script to make it a masterpiece. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Better Than the Movies. We'll see you next time.